Welcome to the June 21st, 2011's meeting, joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Can we have a roll call for the council, please?
Council members Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Friedman.
Here. Coffee?
And roll call for the Redevelopment Agency.
Agency members Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Manukian.
Here.
Can we hear your report, please?
The agenda for June 21st, 2011 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, June 16, 2011 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Before you is an item, Director of Community Development, regarding project design update for the Wilson, Maryland lofts at 111 East Wilson Avenue and 215 North Maryland Avenue. At 1A is agency motion, providing direction to staff on potential changes to include subterranean parking.
Thank you. Mr. Starbird?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll go to Phil Lanzafame, Chief Assistant Director. Phil.
Ms. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Chairman, members of the Redevelopment Agency. On March 29th, the Redevelopment Agency entered into a disposition and development agreement with the developer for the Wilson, Maryland mixed-use project, which would include a 5-screen Lumley Theater, approximately 7,500 square feet of commercial retail space or restaurant, and then 42 live-work residential units above. As initially contemplated, all of the parking would be accommodated off-site. The commercial elements would use public parking, and then there was an agreement that the city reached with the developer to lease some 70 spaces in the exchange garage for the residential tenants. During the approval process, some concerns were raised by agency members about off-site parking. And in fact, if there is a question on this project, it would be that off-site parking. It's a relatively new product for Southern California and certainly for Glendale. Because of this, staff continued to discuss with the developer the potential of a layer of underground parking or somehow incorporating underground parking within the project. It recently came up at an agency meeting or budget meeting, so it was appropriate for us to bring it forward for you. We have talked with the developer and their design team, and it appears as though that the project could accommodate one level of subterranean parking, approximately 46 spaces, and then some other transit amenities. I'll let the developer describe those to you. This is we're looking at in conjunction with the expansion of the Alex Theater just to the north. The expansion would be on the south side of the theater between the two buildings. As a result, we may be able to gain some economies of scale in excavation between the two projects. At this point, I'd like to invite the developer representatives to come up, describe the design that they've come up with, talking with our staff, and then I will come back at the end to talk about economics of that.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn, and my offices are located here in the city of Glendale. At our last public hearing on this project, I spoke about 3 important components to it. The first was the Lumley Theaters, and it's a family-owned chain of theaters, and I mentioned that they were dedicated to bringing quality movies to our community. The second component was the 42 residential units, housing in the downtown core. And then the third component I spoke of at that time was the restaurant, the Panda Inn that's on the site right now, and inviting them to come back into the project, which is something that we would like them to do, and it sounds like they would like to do, and that means they would move forward as a partner in our project, or as a tenant in our project, I should say. Now a fourth component is parking and transportation-related items. We gave you a handout, a 10-page handout, and I'll summarize with just a few slides if I could ask the city clerk to put up the first one. Could you go to the next? The first slide, as was mentioned, is 46 on-site parking spaces and a subterranean garage. What we have, as well as one of those parking spaces, is what we're calling a shared car or communal car parking space. And you can see that depicted in the middle slide. And what that is that's an
What kind
electric...
of car is that? What
It's
is
an
that?
electric vehicle. Which kind of car is it, though?
No, it's an electric vehicle?
Yes, it's an electric vehicle. What we would do is, as you can see it depicted, we'd have a charging station in the parking stall. It would be for the residents of this building, and they would either opt in or opt out. Obviously, they'd need driver's license and insurance and all the other good stuff. And it would be administered by our on-site manager. This car would be free for the residents of our facility. And what we are hoping is that by having that car, the residents could go out and run errands or go shopping or pick up dry cleaning or whatever. That could persuade many of them not to have a second car because of providing a car on site for them for their needs. We're also providing, as you can see in this slide here, 34 what we're calling secure bicycle racks, bicycle storage, and lockers. And that's along with on-site private storage that we're providing as well. Would you go to the next slide, please? Go one more if you don't mind. We put this slide in because we wanted to show you in terms of public transportation. We're very centrally located. In fact, right around the corner from us is both buses for the MTA and buses for the Glendale B line, which can take you all around the city in terms of public transportation. What it can also do is take you down to the Glendale Transportation Center, and from there you can go all around Southern California, once again using public transportation.
Were you watching the transportation meeting yesterday?
I heard of your transportation meeting yesterday. I didn't watch it, though.
We're about to cancel that route. No, just kidding.
If you can go back to the next slide, and this will be the last slide. What this shows you is in terms of parking within about a 1-block radius of our site. And we're very fortunate to be in this location in that there are some 2,500 plus parking spaces within a 1-block radius. That's public. There's also a few hundred private parking spaces as well. Other transportation demand-related items we are supporting or providing. We are subsidizing transit for the employees of both the movie theater and the restaurant. We have carpool programs and financial incentives for ride-sharing. We would support a low-fare single-price taxi service if it was to come about. Also a shared bicycle program. To us, all of these transportation-related items make a lot of sense, especially in the downtown core and especially in urban housing that's coming to the city of Glendale. There's articles, there's studies that discuss California's housing shift, not just with the economy, but in terms of the preferences for people who are entering the housing market. And it's going more away from single-family houses in suburban areas and going more towards multifamily housing in urban areas. So between these transportation-related items, the choices of people wanting to live closer to work, closer to the restaurants, and closer to entertainment, taking different modes of transportation, this is exactly what this project is providing. The architectural style of the building is still a work in progress. We are here to talk about any of the specific issues. However, I want to assure you we will design a building that all of the city of Glendale will be proud of. Finally, the development team, which you'll hear from after I speak, consists of Mapleton RDS, led by Mark Nathanson, and Limley LLC, which consists of just the individuals themselves. They're quality individuals. They're dedicated to bringing a quality project to the citizens of Glendale. I'll conclude my remarks. We've also been working closely, as was mentioned, with the Alex Theater and Barry McComb. We are aware of and sympathetic to and took into consideration their loading area and also any future expansion plans they may have. We are in dialogue with them on that. I'll conclude my remarks. I can answer questions now, or I can answer questions later in the hearing. Thank you
Why
very
don't
much.
we go through the rest of the cards, and then if we need to call you back up, we will, unless
Great.
anyone has a pressing question right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My next card, Mark Nathanson.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, City staff, I'm Mark Nathanson. I'm chairman of Mapleton RDS Real Estate Group. We've been in the real estate business for over 20 years. Today we own and operate over 3 million square feet of mixed-use retail and residential projects throughout the United States, including in Glendale and in Pasadena. In spite of the economic downturn that we've all experienced in the real estate business in the last 3 years, we and our partners, the Laemmle Theaters, are strong believers in the city of Glendale and the need for urban infill mixed-use housing like the Wilson, Maryland project that we are proposing. We have agreed with the suggestions that have been made by members of the City Council to include a level of underground parking beneath the 4-story project. We believe this will benefit the project and will be a plus to future residents of it. We've also learned and been educated by the city and members of the council about different types of transportation, and we've actually incorporated some of these ideas in other projects that we have in other places in the country. And as Rodney Kahn said, we're proposing that for this project as well. The one level of underground parking, we're asking the city to share with us in the cost of it. It will add 3 or 4 months to the construction, but we believe it will be a benefit to everyone to have one level of underground parking. The parking will have 46 spaces, 34 bike racks, plus the communal transportation. We've allocated funds, as you've heard, for an efficient communal transportation plan for the residents of the project. In addition, we have on-site storage units for the residents in the garage. There will also be residential trash and recycling facilities, and the whole project will have a Silver LEED certificate. We thank the council and the staff for their hard work. We have already committed considerable amount of money to this project, and we are ready to go forward for the Wilson, Maryland mixed-use project as a model for modern urban infill residential housing units and bringing the Laemmle Theater to Glendale. I want to just end by 2 very brief stories. I was at a doctor's office today, Gregory Fraser, who's a resident of Glendale. His wife was in the office, and I was saying I was coming before the city council in the afternoon, and I was talking about the Laemmle Theaters. They weren't aware of the project, and I told them, and his wife said to me, I would be thrilled because I've been going to Pasadena to go to movies that I, as an adult, enjoy, and I would love that to be in the city of Glendale. The same time after our last public hearing, 2 ladies who were sitting behind me, who are with the First Baptist Church across the street from the project, said to me they would be very supportive of having theaters because they have a senior citizen group who comes there to the church. They have discussions. They'd like to go to a movie and then have a discussion group afterwards. So these are just examples of the plus to the community, of all different members of the community that Laemmle Theaters would bring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Greg Laemmle.
Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address you all this afternoon. My name is Greg Laemmle. I am the president and managing member of Laemmle Theaters, LLC. Laemmle Theaters was founded in 1938 by my grandfather Max and his brother Kurt. In the 73 years since, we have established a reputation as the best source in Los Angeles for art, foreign, and independent cinema. I'm very proud to be the 3rd generation actively managing this family business. As an independent, family-owned business, we have weathered many challenges, from the rise of television to the introduction of VHS tapes and DVDs and beyond. Through it all, we've always believed that there is a future for movie-going and that people will always welcome the option of getting out of the house and engaging in the shared public experience of movie-going. That's the real magic of the movies. I want to thank you and city staff for working with us and our partner, Mark Nathanson of Mapleton RDS Real Estate Group, on suggestions that have been incorporated into the improved Wilson, Maryland project that we are bringing to you today. I'm excited that we are able to bring forward a project that provides on-site parking for the residential component of the Wilson, Maryland project, and also a shared electric car program. As a daily bicycle commuter, I'm also very happy to see that there will be 34 bicycle parking racks. As a board member of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, I have followed the development of the Glendale Safe and Healthy Streets Initiative. Wilson, Maryland, as an infill mixed-use project, is a perfect complement to all that you are doing in the city to encourage uses of all modes of transportation. With regard to the specific theater use at Wilson, Maryland, I will spare you a repeat of the list of films my father, Robert Lemley, mentioned at our previous hearing, films that were not shown at any other Glendale theaters. Suffice to say that Glendale residents are currently not being given the opportunity to see all that the world of cinema has to offer. With this project, Glendale residents will no longer have to drive to Hollywood or Pasadena for a movie and dinner. In approving the Wilson, Maryland project, you will be giving Glendale residents the opportunity to see a wider array of intelligent and thought-provoking films in their community, spending less on commuting to other parts of the Southland, and instead spending their entertainment and dining dollars right here in Glendale. In closing, I'm excited to be involved with this project, innovative project. Together with our partner, we have committed time and money to getting the Wilson, Maryland project to this point, working with the council and city staff to address valid concerns. I hope that these resources have not been spent in vain, and ask for your approval of the project so that we can quickly move ahead. The sooner we can start, the sooner we can begin presenting Lemley films to the citizens of Glendale in Glendale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jay Ricebaum?
Thank you. Mayor, City Council, and City Staff, I'm Jay Ricebaum. I'm Senior VP of Lemley Theaters. We are excited to be a part of the team bringing this exciting and innovative mixed-use project to Glendale. We especially appreciate the opportunity to partner with Mark and Mapleton RDS. After our last hearing, the word got out that a Lemley Theater was coming to Glendale. We received wonderful feedback from local patrons through email, Facebook, Twitter, and even some old-school phone calls. They shared with us their excitement at staying in Glendale to enjoy our unique Lemley film-going experience. Our focus over the past decade and a half is to work closely with the elected leadership and staff of cities who understand the importance of creating appropriately scaled, sophisticated retail, theater, and residential experiences for the local community. We have completed such projects in Pasadena and in Claremont, and we are currently under construction in the NoHo district of Los Angeles. We are pleased to be a part of this innovative, environmentally sensitive mixed-use project, along with a new and improved Panda Inn restaurant. We received and are appreciative of your input, and we responded with the addition of on-site residential parking. We believe that this improves the project, but we need help to bridge this additional expense. Glendale is a proven place for film going. Our Lemley Theater in the Union, Maryland project will be a boutique, state-of-the-art concept, including 5 screens, 100% digital cinema, full stadium seating, high-back rocker chairs, and wall-to-wall screens. We will serve as a complement and an alternative to the existing Hollywood studio-oriented theaters that currently exist in Glendale. Lemley Theater strives to be your neighborhood theater, bringing cinema that would otherwise not be available. We look forward to becoming an important part of the cultural fabric of the city of Glendale. We appreciate your consideration of our project.
Thank you. Jason Tolson?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Jason Tolson. I'm one of the principals of Serrano Development Group, performing development services for this project. Here to answer any questions about the construction or some design issues you may have with the project you'd like to discuss. Just briefly, our project is a 4-story structure over subterranean parking. The amendment to the approved DDA is the subterranean plan you see here. In addition to the many other public benefits previously mentioned, this project will create 250 to 300 jobs, good paying, prevailing wage jobs for construction workers, design professionals, and the like. This project hard cost valuation is $10.6 million, and the addition of the subterranean structure adds about 4 months to the construction schedule for a total of about 18 months. If you have any questions about any of the issues, feel free to call me back. Thanks.
Thank you. Aram Kazazian.
Good afternoon. My name is Aram Kazazian. I guess I'm the only one speaking against this project, but I do have some concerns. We have some properties on Wilson, and we have some big concerns. I hope you grant me the same privilege if you pass this. Now, I figure there's 42 units. 42 units is required parking is about 84 plus 9 guest parking. That's 93 parking spaces. You ask, you have 600 seating for the theater. That's about 300 cars, people coming in, and you know a lot of people are not going to walk into the downtown. So that's 300 more cars. That's 393 parking. Plus the 60 parking spaces, you're going to existing parking spaces you're going to lose. So plus the restaurant parking. So we're talking about 550 parking space required for this project, and we're going to only let them have a 42 parking space. That's amazing. I hope you will vote for me. I expect that for my project, I'm going to do that. And now, if you take the cost of about 46 car parking spaces for this project, it's approximately about $800,000 at the prevailing wage, I estimated it. And you take about $300,000, you're going to remove from that for the foundation, you're going to save because you don't need a foundation for the building. You're going to be sitting on the parking structure. So that brings the one-level parking structure down to approximately about $520,000 cost. Now, every level you add to it is going to cost you about $800,000. If you go down another level, it's going to cost you about $1 million because the further down you go, you have more shoring involved, more involved. So that part is going to get more expensive. What are we doing? Are we competing these apartments with other buildings that are not even rented at this time? So we're going to let them have with no parking. Even if you go one parking, that one parking is not sufficient. You need 2 parking spaces plus guests. So they have a benefit over the existing apartment buildings in town right now. And then you go to live and work. Live and work, that means the people are not moving their cars. They're going to be stationary there. So 2 car parking spaces are going to be all around the neighborhood. So you're going to be inconveniencing the neighborhood people at this point of time because they're going to have to go and get preferential parking space. They're going to fight for that because they cannot no longer park. So we have a more problem right there. Then you have the question of do we need to lose all this parking space? And we're going to give the land away, and then we're going to put a project on it that's going to hurt the neighborhood. It's going to all the surrounding buildings around there. It's going to be hurting. Where are those people going to park? Are we going to align Maryland? Maryland is off alignment right now. We're going to align it. We're not going to align it.
Okay,
we have a lot to talk about, but of course I don't have much time. Thank you much.
Thank you. Mike Mohill's my last card. If anybody else wishes to speak, this is the time to turn in your card.
Good afternoon again, Mayor Friedman and council members. I have no problem, and I like the idea of an art house in Glendale. In fact, if you recall, some council members, I went before the council and talked about the entertainment district. And one of the things I talked with a lot of people in the neighborhood, and they say we'd like to have an art house like a Lemley. I'm all for it. Most people will say they're for it. The biggest problem is the parking. Parking, parking, and parking. Right now, there isn't enough parking downtown. And the way this company has decided to have the housing with it, and the number of seats in the theater, we're going to have a nightmare there. We should demand a couple of floors of parking. I remember Mayor Freeman saying to us, I don't know, that if we need more parking, we'll go out and build another parking structure. Well, which office building are we going to tear down, or which apartment building are we going to tear down? If we're going to need parking, let's do it now, not on an area that has already a building. We need to go 2 to 3 levels down, at least. I'm not an engineer, but my associate here, Mr. Arkazazian, he knows about building, he knows about construction. I don't have that critique. I just use common sense. And common sense says, you allow the project the way it is right now, we're going to have a nightmare. The poor people who live in the apartment building adjacent to this project will have even less parking for their own guest. Where's the guest parking? And they also mentioned this thing with this electric car for the tenants. How many are you going to have? One, or are you going to have a dozen of those free parking places? And the bike racks. You know what? Bike racks are fine. But I look around the city, I see very few people using the bicycles. And we spend all this money lining the streets, and every once in a while I see someone riding a bicycle, and we spend thousands of dollars. If anything, we should license these bicycle riders and let them pay for the maintenance we're doing to stripe the streets. Bottom line, this project needs more and more parking. Maybe we have to have less tenants in this building. Or just make it a movie theater and forget about the housing. We don't need housing. We got plenty of empty buildings, apartment buildings right now. We can hope for the future, but let's live in the present. Because the way the economy is running, the California economy would take 10 years to be what it used to be before the bubble. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Starbird first. He received an email, I think he wanted to read into the record.
Let me see if I can get to it here.
And while you're looking for that, I also would like you to explain, in terms of the finances of this, how the current legislation affecting redevelopment affects this project, if it does, and what else these funds could be used for in the future, given the current state of legislation.
Let me first read an email that all of you just moments ago received from Mr. Rick Lemo, representing Caruso Affiliated. It reads, "Dear Mayor, Council, and staff, please let this email serve as a message urging you to move forward with the Laemmle Theaters project in Glendale. On behalf of Rick J. Caruso and myself, Rick Lemo, we believe this project is crucial furthering the goals of the Downtown Specific Plan, the prospective BID, Business Improvement District, and the overall quality of life and economic success in Glendale. Respectfully, Rick Lemo, Senior Vice President, Caruso Affiliated." With regards to the status of redevelopment and the state's budget, although there was legislation that passed the Assembly and the Senate that was a trailer bill to the budget was vetoed by the governor. The budget legislation was vetoed by the governor. The two trailer bills that would have effectively, on the one hand, terminated redevelopment and then provided an opportunity for redevelopment agencies who paid funds to the state, sizable funds to the state, to continue on their existence until the end of the project area was held in abeyance. I've recently received from Ledge Council and League of California Cities Council an opinion that until there is a budget that's been signed by the governor, any budget trailer bills are held in abeyance, so effectively wouldn't even be forwarded to the governor. That means at this point in the past 6 months, redevelopment has been threatened with two different pieces of legislation. The first, the proposed budget by the governor, which would have eliminated redevelopment without an opportunity to remain in existence, and would have set up oversight committees whose purpose was to maximize the amount of resources for distribution to the taxing jurisdictions. I think I describe that as the most threatening of the legislation, because there were no options for keeping your agency alive. this second set of legislation that at least affords an opportunity to have an agency remain in existence. However, from Glendale's standpoint, and likely many agencies, would essentially take all of your disposable resources. Many agencies wouldn't be able to take the option because they wouldn't be able to come up with the resources to pay the state's request for funding, some referring to that as extortion. Likely here in Glendale we might possibly be able to, but it would certainly significant limit, if not completely curtail, our discretionary programs on a going forward basis for the central project area. It's hard to say the implications of the threats that we've faced on current projects. As you know, we took many steps to try and protect our local resources. You all took steps as the Council, Redevelopment Agency, Housing Authority to get in place as many of the valuable projects as you could so that hopefully they'd be protected from the state raid. My recommendation, going back to the beginning discussions on the upcoming year's budget and as we came out of the previous year when the state did actually raid redevelopment funds, was to commit as much of the resources as possible to investment in your community. I still believe, based on what we've seen in the past 6 months, that that's certainly the most prudent approach, is to invest your funds in meaningful projects locally. The project you have before you, as well as the projects you've approved the last several months, could very likely be the very last redevelopment projects you'll be able to invest in. So like most things, invest wisely. Invest in projects that will give you the greatest return from a quality of life standpoint. And most of all, my thought would be, make sure that you have committed those funds for investment, or the state may very well take them. And they'll certainly provide us with a better benefit in serving the community, in my view, through projects like Lemley and housing in the downtown area that's in furtherance of the downtown strategic plan, than they will in plugging what is a multi-billion-dollar fiscal morass at the state level. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is just, we need to look at this project on its merits, absolutely, but we also need to keep in mind that if we don't invest this money, whether it's on this project or something else, probably within the next month, 2 months, we may very well lose access to those funds completely. So I just want people to be mindful of that as we go forward. With that, yeah, Mr. Starbird?
Well, in that regard, it might be useful, since one of the speakers spoke in particular, in fact, both speakers spoke in particular about the parking. As you know, when you first visited this project, without the parking, there was an environmental analysis and information from your parking staff that there is adequate parking in the public garages that are made available for both the housing and the theater. This project is brought to you now, proposes to provide parking in addition to the public parking that would be committed to the housing. So in that respect, the project itself is improved, in our view, meriting the additional investment by the agency. So outside of the threat by the state, as a standalone project, even without the state threat, we'd be recommending approval of this project, and we believe it's significantly improved with the addition of parking in the various pedestrian mobility assets that have been proposed by the developer.
Okay, let me go to my colleagues. Mr. Quintero?
Okay, I'll start with my comments. I think this is one of the most important projects in the downtown area. There's a number of them, and I'll talk about them, but I think this is particularly important because of that corner location, because it is a mixed-use project with a super prominent and important theater chain. It's not going to compete with the Americana. It's not going to compete with the other theater chains in town. It's a specific type of clientele that comes to this theater. I think the theater is going to do great. I mean, the foreign films that they screen, and with the large foreign immigrant population in Glendale, I think it's going to be one of the most prosperous of the Lemley chains. But that residential component and the theater component, that is the key to that section of Brand Boulevard and that section of the downtown. If you, I mean, this is the line. If you follow Broadway all the way out to Brand Boulevard on any given weekend, on any evening, you'll see lots of activity around the Americana, sometimes spills over across the street on Brand, and of course back and forth to the Galleria. But north of Broadway, you see very little activity. You've got the Exchange that has been in trouble, let's call it, literally since it was built. And then you go further up Brand, you have a couple of, Farniente always does well, Porto's, of course, is packed, but you look at those restaurants and look at the retail, and you just don't see much activity. This project will absolutely help those merchants, and it's going to help those merchants more than advertising, more than branding, more than all of the other things that we're trying to do to help that business community. In talking to the Merchants Association at the Chamber of Commerce Gala a few evenings ago, there wasn't one of them that was against it. Everybody's for it. Everyone. So I think it's very important, along with the other projects that are coming online, the Broadway Lofts, which is on the other side of, literally 1 block away from these lofts. We're going to have the Broadway Lofts. I think that's going to energize the exchange. Then you've got the empty lot on Brand and Wilson. Hopefully there'll be a project coming there soon. We have the project on Central and Orange behind the parking lot there behind Porto's. That's coming online. That demographic is not going to be the demographic that we have in most of the other apartment buildings in Glendale. It's going to be a different type of person that's going to rent these apartments. Then let me talk about what I would consider smart development, and this is the type of development that not only deals with a younger demographic, but it's also the type of demographics that I think are going to be interested in electric cars, that are going to ride their bikes. Are they going to ride their bikes from downtown Glendale to downtown Hollywood where they work, or Los Feliz or Pasadena? Maybe not, but they sure would be inclined to ride bikes throughout the day or on the weekends. So I think the issue of parking, we can't be a slave to the automobile any longer. That is over. I've been doing quite a bit of traveling to cities that ordinarily I wouldn't necessarily go to, to Pittsburgh, to Atlanta, to Dallas. I mean, those aren't exactly resort locations. And what have I seen in each of those cities? Exactly what we're doing here. Buildings that appeal to a different demographic. Sometimes they have absolutely no parking. Other times I sort of look and you can see that there's some sort of limited parking. So what we're doing here is the new urbanism. It's what's being done across the country. This is nothing new. We're not breaking any ground here. This isn't a multifamily project somewhere in the rest of the multifamily zoning here in Glendale. This is unique to the downtown, and this is what we have to do. And over time, the people that stay there, they will do exactly what I've been talking about. They'll ride their bikes or walk. Sometimes they'll use public transportation. Having the electric car, quite frankly, I hope maybe we can eventually do more than one car. If it's popular enough, maybe there'll be two electric cars that can be sort of set up there for the residents. But all in all, I'm much more comfortable that we do have one level of parking, by the way. I think no parking, I don't think Glendale's quite ready for it. I don't think the developers would be able to charge the kind of rents that they hope to charge, or if eventually they're sold into condominiums, I don't think they could get the prices that they would hope to get. So I think one level of parking, I believe, is just right. In terms of impacting the neighborhood, my count, parking structures, I count 1,319 parking spaces in the new structures that we've built. And then the surface parking lots in the surrounding neighborhood on Wilson, Orange, etc., I count 234 for a grand total of 1,553 parking spaces. So I think that would be more than adequate for the for residential guests or for the Lemley patrons. So at any rate, like I say, I just think this is probably one of the most important things we can do for the exchange and for the mid-brand merchants. I hope we can pass this. Hopefully it'll be constructed quickly, and it also ties in with the Alex and our efforts to try and work something in terms of the loading docks and all of the other issues that the Lemley has, so that we can have a more productive Alex and be able to hopefully make a few bucks on the project. But I'm very excited about this, and I think I know it's the right way to go.
Thank you. Mr. Najarian?
Well, Bill's history of this project was somewhat generous, I think, to what really transpired. And what happened was speaking for myself, you had a council member who was kicking and screaming, very much opposed to this project on the basis of parking. To say that you took my concerns into account and continued to work, well, the only working that began is when Mr. Draymond lost the election and Mr. Manukian came in, and people started to count votes and realized that there may be some problems here. I think there's a couple lessons here. Number one, good enough isn't. The fact that we've got a premier movie house and a premier developer should never have been enough for this council to say, we don't want to push any parking, we're just going to let it be like this. You can see now what a little bit of discussion and a little bit of insistence on the part of the council can lead to. I know this is not the total number of parking that would meet code. However, it's a step in the right direction, and I'm very happy to see that they've incorporated. And this was, I think, I'm very happy to see all these components, because I know this is a result of perhaps a rant session that I had in the city manager's office when I said, why can't they do parking?
You never rant. Oh. Never rant, Mr. Najarian.
Why can't they do shared parking, get a zip car, put rental bikes, and all these other sort of things? The taxi zone, which have already had a conversation with several of the taxi companies, and they're very happy to go for a single fare in the downtown area, so that people that live in these apartments or condos would not feel obligated to buy a second car or even a first car, and that they know that if they need to travel, they've got some transit, they've got bikes, they've got a zip car, they've got walking, or they've got a single fare cab, which I think goes a long way towards alleviating some people's concerns about what taxi cabs are going to be. So very good. I mean, I'm very happy that Mr. Nathanson and the Lemley folks, and with the cajoling, I'm sure, of Rodney Kahn, who's their official vote counter in the city of Glendale, saw that there may be some support for incorporating some parking in the project. Yes, we're kicking in half of the cost. I don't know if Mr. Kazazian's estimates are correct, but in fact, if it's less than $1 million, 800 or 500, all the better. All the lesser of a city contribution for this. I think the non-single occupant vehicle components for transit make this a perfect match with the type of uses that are being suggested. The Lemley movie house, the live-work lofts. So I think it's very good. I mean, this is a lesson where we as a council shouldn't just say, well, that's it. Even when the developer says that's it, it's never really it. Sometimes there are other ways to make it a win-win situation for the developers, for the residents, and perhaps swing a few city council votes also at the same time. I think it's very good. I would also like to suggest, as a issue that's not directly related, but with regard to parking, I think we need to contact the owners of the large private parking garages to see what we can do to work with them to make them available to the public in the evenings when they're completely empty and void, with just thousands and thousands of spaces available. Whether there could be some cost sharing, whether we could run our run our sweeper through their garages every week or so to help with some of their maintenance costs. There's got to be some way to open up some of the parking. Obviously, reducing the parking burden on any developer is going to encourage projects. And we heard that if this had to be fully parked, this would not have come to fruition. So as other parking alternatives open up, aside from our municipal lots, which maybe are getting fuller, I think we've got great opportunities to continue development, smart development, green development, if you want to use that word. I don't use that word too often. I'm usually not the green guy up here, but I think it's really a great example how putting our heads back together can make something that's going to be something that we can all be proud of. The moviegoers will be happy. The residents will be happy. The surrounding businesses. Rick Caruso is happy, for God's sake. If he's happy, you know, we usually don't read, and we usually don't read any emails off the BlackBerries into the record. This is...
On occasion it's happened.
Usually we don't. We do on occasion. It's not unheard of, but the downtown merchants. So, I set the bar with the consultant, and the bar has been met. So I will be supporting this project at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver?
Well, I'll just reserve my comments to one thing I said from the first day that it came into closed session. I don't know how long ago. I said the area south of the Alex Theater should be master planned. I've been told that it has been, or it can be done later after this is built. I beg to disagree. It should have been master planned, the entire south block, as well as the remainder of the block north of the Alex Theater. You master plan it, you look at the overall space development of the parking, open space that we'd like to create, etc. In my view, that has not been done. It's been deemed by my colleagues that it does not need to be done. And it's nice to know that Rick Caruso and Rick Limo seem to support it, but I should remind them that down in the Americana, when we assembled all those packages, and I was sitting here, we left out the Golden Key and the recording studio. And look at the hell it put us through in terms of acquisition of that land that cost Mr. Caruso millions of dollars, where it wouldn't have needed to be if we had originally assembled his parcel the way it should have been. As far as the redevelopment agency, we also get the emails, and the part that was not included is that the California Redevelopment Agency is preparing lawsuits to sue the governor and the legislature for trying to violate certain state laws. There will probably be a stay put in place, and the redevelopment agencies may never go away. There's two sides to that issue. You heard one, I just gave you the other. So because it was not master planned the way I think it should be, I will not support this project. I have not changed my position at all.
Thank you. Mr. Manoukian?
And as usual, I have questions. I was opposed to this project because it had no parking, and currently I'm on the fence, actually. I would like to know how many parking spaces this project would require if it was not being subsidized as far as the parking is concerned. The theater, not the Panda Express business, but the theaters and the housing development. How many?
Why don't we ask Mr. Gani to come up?
Yeah, don't we have that number?
And let me also just point out while he's coming up that the Mann Theater, which is going out of business, had no dedicated parking. So
I know.
That's been the precedent.
What might be useful is if we can share the component of the environmental review, which included a review of the parking requirements under the code as well as what's available.
Well, if you can just tell me the number, I'd appreciate it.
I believe the question was, if I heard the question, if you were going to do the strict application of the code-required ratios, that would be 185. However, in the same code, you can always ask for parking reduction permits based on a number of other things, and that is, per the environmental analysis, this.
I just asked you for the number that would be required.
That's 185.
Okay. When did we purchase the property? What year?
Parking lot?
the property that we're getting first rent on, and then
We got it
we're
for
generating...
$300,000. We got it for $358,000, so that's...
No, I know, $351,000.
Must have been a while.
The Panda Inn site...
How much is the fair market value of that property?
Probably...
That's why I asked when you purchased it. If we purchased it, 500 years ago, it's worth a lot more than $351,000. So I want to know that is a property that belongs to the community of Glendale, and I want to know what is the community, what are the taxpayers contributing to this project outside of the bare cost historical cost numbers.
It's about 50 years ago. Way back. It used to be a paint store.
Yeah, I know. So if it's been like 20 years, then it's worth more than $350,000? Would you say?
The parcels of comparable size that were part of the DPSS acquisition were in the neighborhood of $2.5 million.
Something around that.
Yeah. So.
And how much revenues does the parking lot generate? Not the rental fee that's here.
In parking fees, John, do you recall?
We generate about $65,000 a year, but then we have to subtract about $15,000 for maintenance.
So about $50,000.
Netting about 50.
So if you take into consideration, is the Panda Inn going to continue paying rental to the agency? $81,900 per year.
That is the approximate rent.
They will as long as
they will
they're there.
continue paying the rent?
As long as they're there, but at some point, hopefully they'll become a tenant of the new project and they'll pay rent to Mr. Nathanson.
Correct.
Oh, so we're foregoing that as well?
Well, because the building's torn down, the theater goes in its place. We wouldn't have the building anymore.
Okay, so that's about $140,000 a year that we're foregoing, in addition to the fair market value of the property. And we are being asked to subsidize an additional $1.1 million for the parking structure.
The estimate for the entire structure is 2.2, and we would take half of that.
So, and I look at this, maybe it's not fair of me to look at this from the financial standpoint alone. If we take into consideration that this project, the total agency cost of 2.95 to about $3 million, and if we add in the additional costs, for me it's at a minimum $5 million, the agency costs for this project. And I'm having a hard time seeing the benefit. I've never been to a Laemmle theater. I don't claim to be an arts person, and although I work in the Armenian television industry, I'll put it that way, but I've never attended your theater. I'm sure I've heard very positive comments about the theater, and I have friends that go to Pasadena to watch it. So, but again, I'm still on the fence on it, and I'm looking at it from a financial point of view, and the finances don't make sense to me. $800,000 of revenues for the present value, as opposed to a $5 million investment today, is just difficult to reconcile at this point. So, but I have to say that the reason why I'm on the fence now is because Mr. Quintero made such a compelling argument for the project.
I'm not done. I have more to say.
Your microphone.
Microphone, please.
Can I share some perspective on the issues that Mr. Mnuchin has raised? Because we often get concerns about that with redevelopment projects. A theater project in most downtown settings is never going to pencil. They won't pencil for the theater operator in particular unless there's some assistance because of parking demands, the cost of land, and all of that. I've been in this business a long time, and projects like a theater, like a hotel, they generally won't pencil to a developer without some assistance, except in unique locations. But in a downtown like this, where you're looking at it becoming part of an anchor to be an attraction, no question about it, to Mr. Nathanson or to the Lemleys, this project wouldn't pencil as a private development if they had to pay fair market for their property. It just won't make any sense to them. From a redevelopment standpoint, I think you have to look at this as bringing some vitality to the downtown area and investing in something that's going to have spin-off benefit that it's hard to just sit down with a pencil and a paper and note what your economic return is going to be. Clearly, from a pure numbers standpoint, with this project, if all you do is look at it and your investment, you might as well put your money in the bank and draw interest on it. But that isn't the whole story, and that's why...
You're trying to convince me of that?
No. What I'm saying is so many projects, it isn't a matter of just the return on your dollar investment in a pure dollars and cents sort of analysis. It's got to be the intrinsics that it brings, the attraction to a downtown area. I've heard as a rule of thumb, a theater will increase the business to the surrounding businesses by 10 to 15%. A theater will, especially in a downtown area. So everything from restaurants to pet stores that will stay open in the evenings will better from this. As was mentioned, the exchange, the marketplace have suffered for a long time. We invested lots and lots of money as a redevelopment agency in both of those projects. And I won't say they've been dismal failures, but they certainly haven't been successes. Right. Even though the exchange has a tremendous design, it's beautiful, you'd look at it and say, why isn't that being successful? The answer is because there's never been any critical mass there. A shopping center will have anchors in it in order to be successful. The Galleria has anchor stores in it. The exchange and the marketplace have literally, the marketplace has lost its anchors. We've had Circuit City close. We've had Borders close. We had the Wow store close. They've lost their anchors. And so now, hopefully, projects like the Broadway Lofts will bring some vitality there. The Laemmle Theater, with its name and recognition, and believe me, there are communities that have tried to attract a Laemmle and frankly can't attract them to their communities. I talked to a friend of mine who did redevelopment in a very large city adjacent to us. They tried 3 different economic development projects to attract a Laemmle, and it didn't make any sense for a Laemmle, and they weren't successful with any one of them. To be able to attract...
Let me ask this. I understand all that, and we went through all of that with the Americana, and I agreed with you on that point. However, why you brought up the Mann Theaters, why wasn't, maybe Mr. Khan can answer that, the Mann Theater's going dark pretty soon. Has that been considered for Laemmle instead of tearing this down?
They can answer that. Yes, they have, because it's not their format. And let me talk about the Mann Theater for a second. When I came here 13 years ago, I mentioned to then the Chamber of Commerce that the Mann Theater was already a generation behind what was being built. There were communities that were tearing down that generation of theater and building new theaters. And that Mann Theater, frankly, I think was doomed to failure because of its design and, frankly, its obsolescence.
You can renovate it. I mean, in the interior, you can renovate it instead of starting...
The Laemmles can speak...
Have you looked at the Mann Theater instead of...
Let's get a little movie theater lesson here.
Yeah.
Well, we've looked at the space. It's highly inefficient. It is a generation old, and ultimately it has certain negative connotations attached to it. And to be able to start with something fresh and something new is going to be a better situation for us as an operator. And ultimately the cost, I mean, if you've renovated your house, you know that sometimes you're better off starting over completely.
Yes. What is the attendance? Generally, what is the attendance? Let's say it's mostly weekend crowds.
Yes, it's mostly weekend and evenings.
And what is it in Pasadena? Well, how many theaters do you have in Pasadena?
Pasadena, we have a 7-plex movie theater.
Okay.
Our new North Hollywood theater is contemplated at 7 screens.
And here you're doing 5.
Here we're going with 5 screens. We're going with smaller, more efficient, almost a screening room ambiance, but with very wide and comfortable seats. It will still be we hope to be a wonderful viewing experience for patrons.
What is the attendance? I mean, what can the surrounding businesses, and that is, I mean, the point Mr. Quintero made. The connection between the Americana and the mid-brand is very important to me, and we discussed this during the hearings at the Americana as well. I think that was very important in terms of approving the Americana and the connection to the mid-brand. What can the businesses in that area, in the mid-brand area, expect in terms of foot traffic?
In terms of numbers, the sense is it'll be in the 2,000 to 4,000 patron range per week. It depends on the quality of the product that you have on screen. Certainly, there's certain times of year where it's more busy than others. As Greg mentioned, it's primarily a weekend, Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon and evening driven business.
We have a number of programs to attract patrons during the middle of the week as well. We have a very popular Senior Wednesday program which attracts many people to our other locations. And what I can tell you is the quality of the individuals that show up. They're college educated. They enjoy theater.
Do you have foreign language movies?
Yes, we have. Well, we have foreign language. We have.
You have Armenian
language. We will have Armenian. Well,
you should.
When they're available, we will have Armenian
certainly...
language films. Absolutely.
Okay.
I hope that's answered your questions.
Yeah, and the issue of competition now. Will you be? Is it going to be competing? Because my friends go from here to Pasadena, so they're not going to go to Pasadena anymore.
That may be the case.
Or they might just prefer Pasadena for who knows.
That will be at
but
we'd like to think that there's going to be
a
a larger group of people that will see these films. It's very difficult. You leave your house to go see a movie on a Saturday night. There's a 3-car pile up on the freeway, and now all of a sudden you're turning around because that 15-minute commute to Pasadena has turned into a 1-hour commute. Glendale residents should be able to enjoy these movies in their community without having to travel, without having to brave the streets and traffic patterns, and it's not getting any better out there. So while we may lose some patrons that are currently going to our Pasadena theater, we may lose some patrons that will be going to our new North Hollywood theater, we feel that ultimately this is going to be enough of an attraction that Glendale itself represents a large enough market for these types of films.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I'll support it. And this is giving direction to staff to go and work with this group. I'll support it, but I will ask that the finances be better prepared. The fiscal impact that is here is not proper, in my opinion. We should consider the fair market value, and I think it should be part of the report. The fair market value of the property, as well as the net present value of the foregone revenues from the parking lot and the rental.
With all of that.
Okay, and I would appreciate that. So I will support the initial direction to go forward.
Okay. Wow. I want to, first of all, thank my colleagues. First, Mr. Najarian, for making what I consider to be a very good project into a great project. And he's been stubborn, and he's been a complete pain for me about this, but he was right, and he really pushed this in a good direction. So thank you, Mr. Najarian. And Mr. Manukian, for coming into this with an open mind and listening to your colleagues and asking the good, tough questions and making the right decision. I am, very impressed, because that's not an easy thing to do when you have a position. So I want to thank you for that. Mr. Quintero said a lot of what I would have said, so I'm not going to repeat that, except to say that, in terms of the economics, redevelopment agencies don't buy property the way that an investor would buy property, to kind of sit on it and then flip it later and try to make a profit. We purchase property, strategic property, to improve our downtowns, our redevelopment areas, to reduce blight, to control strategic properties for the betterment of the area. And we don't do that with the intention of necessarily turning a profit. We do that with the idea that we will reap the rewards in terms of economic growth for that particular area. And this project accomplishes that the way that very few other projects have been able to. The Americana perhaps was one. I mean, that certainly created a lot of vitality in our area, and it was a much more expensive project. But having gone to Laemmle theaters in Hollywood and in Pasadena, around Los Angeles, I know what a draw they are. And I know what a draw they'll be for people in Glendale who are currently leaving the city and spending their money elsewhere, and also to the surrounding areas, to La Cañada Flint Ridge, to Silver Lake, to Los Feliz, to Atwater. All of those people will have yet another reason to come into our downtown. And as Mr. Quintero said, for the merchants in North Brand, this should be really something, I'm not going to call it a lifesaver, but really the best we can do to bridge that gap and to give people a reason to go from the Americana and walk up Brand and visit that area of the city. It's really the anchor that we need in the north part of the city. We have small anchors in terms of Portos and Farniente and many of our other businesses, Faux Hut, one
Carousel.
of my favorites, Carousel. But you really need more because you need to have a way to introduce those out-of-town visitors to those restaurants. And this will do it. This will introduce people that may have never thought to walk up Brand and discover those restaurants, and they'll be introduced to it. It will create that vitality. It will bring in those cultural amenities that many people feel are lacking. And in terms of taxpayer returns, I have not gotten more emails about any project in the city than I have about Lemley. There were unsolicited letters about Lemley when news got out about man closing. Before we even contacted the Lemleys, there were unsolicited letters in the news press from people saying, hey, how about a Lemley theater? We want a Lemley theater in Glendale. So people really want this. And those that have never been, I think will enjoy it. It'll be something different and something new, and certainly something we don't have in the city. So, Mr. Quintero.
Well, I have nothing more to say. I will move 1A with the comments that Mr. Manukian added about a more detailed financial report, if you want to call it that.
I second that.
We have
It's an agency
motion
motion.
It's an agency motion? Okay, then I can't second it.
Okay, well, you had a second
Well, there was a
anyway.
second. It was moved by agency member Quintero and seconded by Najarian.
Okay, can we have a roll call for the agency, please?
Agency members Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian, Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Chair Manukian.
Yes. Congratulations, good luck. Before we adjourn, I will not be here for the city council meeting tonight because my children have a presentation. They're graduating tomorrow. They have a presentation tonight, and it starts at 6. So there's nothing more important than their presentation today. So I will not be at the council meeting tonight.
Okay.
My apologies to everyone.
Council is adjourned.
Second motion for the council adjournment. Thank you.
And can I have a motion for the redevelopment agency?
I'll move.
Second.
We are adjourned for the redevelopment. Thank you very much.